Obviously, we're announcing a trade tonight with Lucas Giolito and Reynaldo Lopez going to the Angels. We're going to start with our players, then I'll talk a little bit about what we acquired and our excitement about that. Quite frankly, it was a mildly emotional conversation with Lucas a few moments ago, informing him of the trade. Obviously, given this club's performance over the course of the last several months, it's apparent that these type of moves have to take place given where we're at and putting us in the best position we can be going forward. That said, obviously Lucas's and Reynaldo's tenure with the White Sox is not ending in the way that we envisioned when we first acquired them. And I complimented both of them not just on their performances on the field, but the players they were in our clubhouse and the way they represented them and themselves and this club off the field, which meant a great deal over their tenure. And they will both certainly be missed, and certainly both can help make that Angels team better positioned for hopefully a postseason run for both of them. In exchange, we're excited that we are acquiring both Edgar and Quero, as well as Ky Bush. Quero, as you saw in the release, is one of the more highly regarded catching prospects in the game at age 20, switch-hitting catcher, who's one of the youngest players in AA. Who this year has posted more walks than strikeouts, and continues to develop as a game caller, and is viewed by the industry, as you've seen from other publications, as one of the top 100 prospects in the game. Ky Bush, left-handed starter, also at AA, was in the Futures game a year ago. Ky had a lat strain that derailed the start of this season, and then I believe there was a small groin issue while he was rehabbing from that, but now is back at AA, throwing consistently, and he provides a 4-pitch mix, quality left-handed starter, someone with some upside, and obviously adds to that category in our organization. So certainly not where any of us in the organization when this year started thought we would be come the trade deadline, but clearly moves like these in terms of putting ourselves in the best position going forward are essential, and we're certainly pleased that we're adding Bush and Quero tonight.
You talked about your conversation, or you mentioned your conversation with Lucas. He has said in recent weeks that his feelings about your organization and how loyal he feels to your organization. What was that conversation like right now?
It was a private conversation about where he was when we first acquired him from Washington, and some of the depths he fell to in 2018, and what the organization was able to do to help get him to be the pitcher and the man he is today, the way he put it. It was, these aren't just moves on the back of a baseball card or something you do in fantasy. You obviously have relationships with these guys, and Lucas and Ray in particular are two guys that we brought in with the goal of winning together. And over the course of their tenure here, there wasn't enough winning, or as much winning as we had hoped. So that's disappointing. Quite frankly, you feel that for a little bit during the course of these conversations with the individual, and then we have to focus on what the matter is at hand and what our job is for the next several days as we lead up to the trade deadline.
Do you look at this as, I don't know if it's fair to ask you, but is this the start of another rebuild? Is this
over the course of the next week or so, we're going to make the moves that make sense to put us in the best position going forward in terms of declaring titles or where we're at for the organization going forward. There'll be plenty of time for that
But you're obviously subtracting
September,
some
October.
Key veterans and adding very young players.
Yeah, guys that were free agents at the end of the 23 season, and unfortunately the 23 season isn't working out the way we wanted, so I think it makes prudence, business, and strategic sense to add future assets for those that are becoming free agents.
Were you fielding a lot of calls for these two pitchers?
We've been busy. There's been a lot of calls. We've been pretty, I would say, fairly popular based upon the fact that we do have several quality arms in particular available, and those are usually what most contenders are looking to acquire this time of year.
In terms of the mechanics, kind of waiting on the Angels a little bit? They were probably a bubble team and sort of was waiting on them to decide.
There wasn't really much waiting on them.
Okay.
I mean, my conversations with Perry were, very direct over the last 48 hours in terms of what we were looking for. He was very clear about, the needs they were trying to address and who he had an interest in, and we were able to move, fairly quickly over the course of today towards a decision. We were talking to a handful of other teams about these individual players, and communicated with each of them today where we thought things were headed, and I don't think anyone else that we were talking to was surprised that these players were moved this evening. But in terms of the Angels, I keep almost saying Anaheim, but in terms of the Angels, the conversations were really direct and candid, and things moved fairly quickly.
How busy do you expect to be over this big period?
It's impossible to prognosticate. I don't think by any stretch we're done, but until you line up on the actual deals and everything gets approved medically, et cetera, then nothing's done until it's finally done. So could be back at this podium again tomorrow, or I may be not talking to you till August 1st. It's hard to say.
You mentioned the youth of the guys that you got back. Is this a trade that you think improves your chances for 2024, or is it for further down the road?
Yeah, it's certainly a long-term positioning on both these guys. Again, Quero is 20. He's third or so youngest player in the Southern League. So to say he's going to be on the opening day roster in 24 might be a tick aggressive. Both he and Bush have the ability to contribute next year, we believe, but certainly not going to rush the development. They're going to let them, they'll declare their own pace. As all y'all know around the game, catcher development can be a little quirky. There can be fits and starts. Sometimes the offense is ahead of the defense or vice versa, and you got to wait for those things to even out. So far, again, as an extremely young player at a high level, at an advanced level, he's performed very well, and the defense continues to make positive strides to match where he was offensively when he was in A-ball. So very optimistic about the development path for both these players, but not quite ready to put a timeline on them.
How would you describe your mindset of just getting in the right headspace to do what you have to do right now?
Yeah, look, unfortunately, I've had several weeks to get to that headspace. I'm certainly not going to lie. The idea that we're at this point where guys like Giolito and Lopez, who we acquired back at 16 when we sort of kicked off a rebuild in earnest, are now the guys that logically made sense to move given their contract status. There's an element of real deep disappointment that we're at this point right now. There wasn't more postseason victories along the way as part of their tenure with the White Sox. But in terms of that, frankly, we have a job to do right now. I'll have time come August 2nd to, have a drink and a cigar. And if I want to wallow in disappointment, do it then. But now is not the time. Now's the time to continue to improve the future of this organization, and I think we did that tonight.
Could you entertain one of those free agents coming back?
Oh, absolutely. No doors are going to be closed. I mean, you've seen that throughout baseball, that guys have been traded at the deadline and re-signed it, whether it's immediately that offseason or some point later in their career. You're not going to hear me have any bad things to say about Lucas Giolito or Reynaldo Lopez, and would be happy to see them in our uniform again at some point in the future.
As you consider the more moves over the next few days, is your intention to position the team to be competitive right away next season? Again,
We're looking to brighten the future of this club, and we're not going to force a timeline in terms of the targets. We're going to get as much talent and as high caliber talent as possible. Talent that's closer to contributing certainly is more appealing than that's farther away, but just about every club's going to feel that same way. So that's nothing too unique.